Today I want to talk to you about what makes a contract. Contracts can be scary and quite a source of stress for people that aren't familiar with them. So if any questions come up for you, stick them in the comments and I'll try to answer them. When we think of a contract, we have an image of a thick 20-page document with tiny text and lots of complicated language. And you probably will come across plenty of those in your time as an illustrator, but a contract can be very simple too. A lot of the time it will be out of your hands as a freelancer because your client will send you a contract to sign. But not all of them do, so where does that leave you legally if you haven't signed any official document? Well, there are 5 things that make a contract. An offer. The client asks you to work on a project. Acceptance. You say, yes, I'd like to work on the project. Consideration. And this is what you would receive in return from the client in exchange for your work. Most likely money, but could be anything. There is an exchange of value. Clearly defined terms. This will include things like the deadline date, the technical specifications, a description of the project, the fee, and probably the license details if you're an illustrator. Finally, legal intent. This means you and the client are intending to enter into a legal agreement together. So for an illustrator, discussing licensing of your intellectual property is a legal issue. If you choose to assign your copyright to another entity or person, that is also a legal issue. That's it. Any discussion that contains those 5 things can be considered a contract. And whether that's a 20-page document or a direct message in Instagram, if these 5 things are discussed, it is a contract. Technically speaking, this could happen over the phone and be legally binding, but good luck trying to prove it if there's a dispute. Far better to have everything in writing. So if in doubt, it can be very useful to get into the habit of listing out the terms of a project very clearly in an email to your client. The price, the key dates, a description of the project, the fee you've agreed, and a statement that you are licensing your work to this client in exchange for that fee. And then you ask them to confirm the details. In one email there, plus their reply confirming, you have covered your back for all manner of future problems. Disputes over prices, or the amount of work that you've got to do, changing deadlines, or the client using your work in ways that you haven't agreed to. Even if your client simply refuses to pay you, you have a contract there in writing. Realistically, illustrators will rarely take people to court over a project. It's expensive, and sometimes more than the project is actually worth. But if you have this kind of proof in an email, you can give it to the small claims court, and that client doesn't really have a leg to stand on. There's very clearly been an agreement there. A more common situation when a project goes wrong is that you'll have a disagreement with the client and you'll simply be able to refer back to this email and prove that you are right and they are wrong. And that is a wonderfully satisfying feeling, being able to shove their own confirmation email back in their face. They can't really argue with that. If they're a reasonable human being, they have to back down before it gets anywhere near legal action. So it's a good habit to get into. It's not perfect. A good, fair contract written by legal professionals is preferable, obviously, but that's not always possible. So with very little effort here, you can protect yourself. Let's say you're working for free, which a lot of people do from time to time. What are you missing from that list of 5 things that makes a contract? You're missing out consideration, the fee, but also potentially the legal intent because you're just giving your work away, and possibly some of the important, clearly defined terms. Obviously, it doesn't matter if this client doesn't pay you because you're doing it for free, but you still should be covering yourself for other potential problems. Let's say your client edits your artwork in a way you don't like or sells your artwork to a third party. That's not very fair. So even if you're working for free, it's still important to list the license details. That's what the client is and isn't allowed to do with the work. It's worth stating somewhere very clearly that there is no assignment of copyright, just to make it 100% clear. And by doing that, you're still covering the clearly defined terms and the intent to enter into a legal agreement. As for the consideration, I would hope that you have negotiated something in return for your work, even if it's not money, that you can list here. But even if not, you can add what your price would have been and then add another line outlining the discount. The client can then still see the value of the project. Either that, or you could just make it clear that it's pro bono. I'll get into the details of a contract that you might receive from a client another time in depth. But there's one thing I'll mention here. If you do get a contract from a client, look out for a section called entire agreement or whole agreement. If you sign a contract with this section in it, it means this contract then takes legal precedence over any other agreement you've made with a client, either over the phone or by email or whatever. The contract literally becomes the entire agreement, and anything outside of it becomes null and void. It overrides anything else you've spoken about with the client. That's not a problem if the contract reflects exactly what you've agreed by email, but it just means you have to be very sure that it does, because those emails won't mean anything after you sign the contract. If anything you've agreed to by email isn't in the contract, ask for it to be added. Make this a part of your process every time you work with a client, because it will come in very handy. Even if it's just to refer back to the details, it's great to have this summary of everything that's been agreed. There will always be clients that want to mess you around and change the terms halfway through a project. This takes a couple of minutes and can save you from hours and hours of banging your head against a wall, arguing the toss with a fuckwit client that's trying to pull one over on you. I'm not thinking of anyone in particular, but just save yourself the hassle. I hope this helps. Let me know what you think in the comments.